Hello, my name is Sydney Pinchok, and I'm joined today by Max Kaufman from Miami's Theater Department's upcoming performance of Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Max leads the ensemble cast as Detective Hercule Poirot. Max, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so first I just want to have you tell us a little bit about Poirot and about your experience playing him.
Yeah. Well, Poirot is maybe one of the world's most famous detectives within the play and in real life. So it's been exciting and scary to take on that role. But it's a character I've loved for a long time, so I've been having a lot of fun exploring that, yeah.
Hello, my name is Boston Dado, and I'm joined here today by Joy Lincetta Cornell, a dialect coach from Louisville, Kentucky, who has worked with Miami's theater department on their upcoming performance of Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Ms. Cornell, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. So, how long have you been a dialect coach, and what accents or dialects have you helped cast members achieve throughout that career?
Oh my gosh. I've been a dialect coach for, oh gosh, I would say over 10 years, 12 years maybe. So quite a while. I don't know how many I've coached. I've probably coached an accent on every continent, I would say.
Mhm.
Almost every continent, if not all. And yeah, there's some that I do more than others, but I've done quite a bit.
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite that you do,
A
or a
favorite? Yeah.
specialty? I guess. Yeah.
I will say my career has been built around coaching a lot of East Asian accents.
Okay.
Um, I've done a lot of research around it and sort of best practices. So in my field, people tend to go to me for East Asian accents.
Murder on the Orient Express features a wide array of dialects,
Mhm.
to the point where the production had a dedicated dialect coach working alongside the cast. Can you tell us about your experience of working with a dialect coach and what a coaching session looked like for you?
Yeah, it was a great experience. Dialects are scary, I think, for a lot of actors because already you're being asked to do something sensitive and like vulnerable, and then to add something that maybe you're not so practiced in and used to makes that harder to get to that point. But Joy set us up really well. We talked about all sorts of things, vowel substitutions and what your oral posture should look like. Uh, yeah.
What was one of those typical coaching sessions like with a cast member? And then outside of that, what was their practice process? As far as you recommended?
So, it's really hard to say that every session was a certain way because
Mhm.
everybody learns differently. Everybody has a different starting point, and everybody has, some people have extensive lines and some don't. So, each session was actually really different. Let's say somebody came in who was really not confident with their accent. We had to go down to the basics and literally just talk about each consonant and vowel sound and really just sort of master it and then apply those sounds to the script and work through each word, slowly and at a pace that wasn't too fast. And so
Mhm.
sometimes these actors would meet with me multiple times. If we had someone who was a little more comfortable with the accent, they would just come to me and they would read their lines, and I would stop and start them, and then we would sort of figure out what each sound was. And it got really technical down to the tongue is going up this way, the mouth, the corners of the lips are going forward. So some of them got really technical coaching from me. And then in terms of the practice, I always say that dialect and accent work is like learning how to dance. It's muscle memory and it's repetitive. So, you don't just learn how to do a pirouette one day, right? You really exercise the muscles and you practice and drill it every day. And I always told them, I said, I know if you've been practicing because I can hear it. And if you haven't, I can tell. You can't cram for it. So for them, I said, be that annoying actor walking down the halls practicing their accent
Mhm.
so that you can really get it into your body, into muscle memory.
Can you share a specific note, technique, or a moment in rehearsal that made either your dialect or your characterization really click for you?
Hmm. Well, one thing I've been sort of uh, blessed with in this production is I get to have a cane, which is super fun, and maybe is every actor's dream to have a cane. You know, it's such a good prop. So that's been fun to explore, and it's an interesting like status symbol for Perot. Like he's prides himself on being well dressed and versed in etiquette, but it also is sort of a power a power symbol for him as well. You know, you use that cane to get people's attention. So that doesn't really have anything to do with my dialect, but it was fun to have a cane. Yeah.
And it's nice that you have something like that that helps you feel like the character as well.
Yeah.
Is there
Totally.
anything else that makes you relate to Poirot in any way?
I think his drivenness and his focus is something I can relate to. I think sometimes you'll see in the show when you come see it that when he starts to focus on something, he wants to stay focused on that thing. And other people may be asking about other things, but he wants to do that one thing. And sometimes that one thing is like, I want to be on vacation. Please don't bother me. And that, I don't know, that's relatable to me. If I'm doing one thing, if I'm focused on one thing, I'd like to do that one thing.
How do you work with cast members to like match their vocal dialect with their physical mannerisms or actions?
So I asked them like how they interpret their character. I'll have them give me sort of a couple of descriptive words on how they want to portray their character. And so if someone says, "Oh, I think this guy is really sort of aggressive and he knows everything and he always wants to be like the loudest person in the room," then we'll start talking about how the dialect and this personality of being aggressive and assertive, maybe they're loud, maybe they really like chew on their consonants. And then we start talking about how the physicality is with that as well. um, I will say sometimes there's not a lot of time to work on this. We do have a full cast at Murder
Mhm.
on the Orient Express, and it was all through Zoom. But if we have the time, we will really talk about character analysis and how we can incorporate um, sound into the way that they're interpreting their character.
How did learning the dialect of Poirot help you to learn about like his character, his mannerisms?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. Well, he's a really specific person, and he is so good at his job because he's so specific and detail oriented. So as we learned about the dialects, it was fun to figure out how specific can he be in the way he speaks, and how can that mirror the way he acts and views the world.
Murder has a like huge ensemble of a cast. What was it like working with that, especially with each character having their own distinct dialect and actions?
It was a marathon. Now they had a really great foundational course with Julia Gashard, who is in my field really one of the veterans and a very dear friend of mine as well. But she was able to give them sort of the fundamentals of dialect work. And so when they came to me, it wasn't like brand new. The concept wasn't brand new to them, but I gave them materials so before they met with me, they would listen to some sound files of people with that accent. And then they would sort of do a little bit of the work that Julia started with them, which was, what do the vowels sound like? What do the consonants sound like? What is their, we call it oral posture, sort of like the shape of their mouth? And then what is sort of the music of that accent?
So how involved were you in the rehearsal process for Murder? Just at the beginning to establish foundation or throughout the whole process? How involved were you?
So I met with them very briefly prior to rehearsal,
Okay.
actually in Julia's workshop, just to sort of say hi and give them a bit of like what I expected from them during our sessions. And then I just had 30-minute sessions with them throughout the rehearsal process,
Mhm.
um, to the point where towards the end, like during tech and all of that, I just had brief check-ins, but I was
Mhm.
available to them throughout the rehearsal process, coaching them on Zoom, and some of them would check in with me multiple times. Others caught on very easily, and I only met with them twice. others more, um, just to make sure they felt really confident in it.
Why was it like so important for the cast to go to that extra mile and really master the dialects?
Well, a big part of the show, a plot point, is that there's characters from all over the world on this train, and that's something that Perot notes as sort of unusual. You know, why are all these people together from all over the world on this train? And so to have the audience immersed in the story meant that we had to immerse ourselves in the dialects.
What is the difference between simply like doing an accent and truly mastering a dialect for performance?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at accent and dialect work, and I tend to I tend to sort of go shift towards the one particular way. But some people like to think of dialect work as just sound, right? So it's like here's how you pronounce it, and some not as many, but back in the day in my field, it was a lot of these are the sounds that you'll substitute for this accent, and it's really just mainly sound. But the bridge that I find most difficult is when an actor not only does the sound, but is able to really embody it and make it their own. So, it feels natural to them and it feels as though it's second nature to them.
Mm.
And that part is really difficult. I think part of part of mastering a dialect is knowing the sound, but then also having it sort of work from an acting perspective. They have to sort of think about what their character, uh, how their character moves, how their
Mhm.
character, what their voice sounds like, how they react to things, but then also how they sound as well.
Mhm.
So it's really about doing character work, acting, and sound when it comes to dialect work, at least with me.
Can you talk a little bit about like your process of memorization and
Mm.
what it typically looks like for you, and then if your usual had to change at all when you were working with a dialect coach?
Yeah, one thing that we talked about from the get-go was you've got to memorize in your dialect, which, if you're not working with a dialect, isn't a part of the process. Yeah, so that was the biggest thing. For this show, I'm not ashamed to admit, I've been going Quizlet crazy. I made a Quizlet of all the lines, and I've been flipping flashcards, running them. And I like to run them as fast as I can, so that they're like really in my brain, and then I can explore when we're at rehearsal.
In relation to the script, how did you recommend your students handle that? Master the dialect first and then learn the script, or vice versa, or all simultaneously?
I find it the most helpful almost for any situation that they learn the accent as they're learning the script.
Mm.
What happens is when you learn the script first, or I've even been thrown into shows where I'm in there halfway through the rehearsal process, so they've already
Mm.
memorized the lines, is that they memorize the lines without the accent. And
Mhm.
so it's sort of this disorienting process if you have to relearn the lines in the accent. So I always like to work early in the process. I like them to be prepared before rehearsals actually start so that they can listen. I always say you can't do an accent that you can't hear very well, meaning like you don't know what sounds you're hearing. So really pre- prep before the rehearsal and learn the script as you're learning the accent.
What was something that was a struggle for you or for the whole cast having to memorize with dialects?
One thing I think that was maybe the most tricky is those really quick scenes. There's a lot of lines happening all at once. Those are tricky in any play, but I think especially as you're trying to wrap your mouth around new sounds, it's hard to speak as quickly and as clearly as you want to in order to keep the play moving. So those quick scenes, I would say.
What was the main struggle from your perspective among the cast for mastering their individual dialects? And which dialect, in your opinion, was the most difficult for a cast member to master?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of the difficulty is that I was on Zoom and
Mhm.
only accessible to them 30 minutes, for 30 minutes each session. And so in a perfect world, I would be there on campus, be in rehearsal every day so that I could watch their rehearsals and give them notes. And then I could also spend a little more time, um, actually coaching them in person because there's something about Zoom and, the tech of it all. I don't know if I'm hearing them incorrectly, right? I don't know if it's the speaker or the microphone.
Hmm.
If I'm in person, I can really tell what I'm listening to. So that was a really big hurdle. However, it also, technology is also uh, really helpful because I'm able to do it from Kentucky. And in terms of like what was the most difficult, I think um, s- I don't want to like point anyone out, but let's just say I think the most difficult ones were the ones that the actor was not familiar with, right?
Hmm.
So like if they weren't familiar with the sounds and they didn't really hear it a lot, they didn't really know what their target was. And so a lot of time, and this happened with almost every actor, they would start to sort of veer into another accent. Like, like, and this is, I'll just give an example of another show, but, I used to have like someone who was doing a Thai accent who started to sound like they were from India. And then sometimes they said that they would sound like Russian. Like so sometimes that would happen with some of these actors is they weren't as familiar with the accent and they would just sort of like end up somewhere else. And so really kind of giving them guidelines on how to stay in the accent. Oral posture is really one of the biggest. It's like this is if your mouth stays this shape, then you will likely be in that accent. Um, but yeah, and it would be a lot easier also if I was in person, so I could like immediately stop them from going into another accent. So yeah, those were the biggest challenges.
Why should people come see Murder on the Orient Express?
People should come see Murder on the Orient Express if they want to laugh, to be surprised, to be scared, and to get to put on their detective hat for a little bit and try to solve a mystery alongside Hercule Poirot.